My mind was overloaded and I felt stuck. I was angry at the world, angry with my parents. Then one day, I took control and decided to parent myself. Watching what happened next changed my life. Welcome to the front row with myself, Rowanna Mudley, and this is Lemon and Honey. I was forced to mature early, and I looked at it initially as a very bad thing. I thought that my childhood had just gone away because I had to think about more maturely. The things that I was thinking about when I was a child was, how is my school fees going to be paid? Will I have stationery for the next year? Will I have a place to stay because my parents kept moving around all the time? So that kind of pressure on a child was quite a lot. But when you're going through it, it doesn't feel like it's quite a lot. It felt like my normal. Only when I became an adult, I realized, hey, perhaps I might have missed out on some childhood norms. I did chores at a very young age. My mom made it mandatory for me to learn how to do chores in the house. I was very responsible and aware of what was going on in my family. My parents were very open about their financial standing and all the struggles that they were going through at the time. And because I would hear them talk about what they were going through, it put me in a position, not asked, but by choice, that I needed to take the lead and I needed to be the person that saved the day. Only now I realized that it wasn't even my role to fulfill. But I took it on because I felt guilty as a child. I felt like I should be the one that should make it right for everyone. And because I'm the oldest child, it sort of made sense for me to take the lead and try my best to get things done. I remember looking at the local newspaper to see if I could find a job that accommodated children on the weekends or during the school holiday. I would yearn to start working and earning an income because I wanted to contribute. I would dream about buying my parents their own house so that they didn't have to worry about rent anymore. And I kept worrying about putting a structure in place at a very young age. I also grew up in a home that was very involved in prayer. We put everything after prayer. Prayer was the ultimate goal. But I realized as an adult that we were not doing the prayer the way we were supposed to be doing. We were not taking the teachings and practicing it in daily life. We were not using the practical lessons that were taught in the right way. Or maybe the right term is we were not exhausting it the way it was supposed to be exhausted. And I remember praying just to pray because we would sit for hours and pray, and that was what we did every single day. And it was priority and it was very important. But we didn't think about prayer as a tool to get to what you wanted. We thought about prayer as just for soul liberation, but not to be used in the world that we live in, if that makes sense. I think I also had a lot of unresolved anger when I was a child. I didn't know I had all of this built up anger or irritation at my circumstances when I was a child. Because when you're going through it, that's kind of your norm. You're not thinking, oh, I have a problem. But as you get older, and you start realizing what you are doing at your particular age and what your parents were doing at that age, then you start thinking, oh, wait, that actually wasn't right. And I started to become more upset about it because I started to have the sense of you could have done better, you should have done better. And there was some resentment about that. And as the years went by and as I got older and the resentment got worse and the resentment became a little more stronger in my heart, I started to blame my parents way more. I blamed them for not having a structure. I blamed them for not having a plan. I blamed them for putting me through everything. And I blamed them for making me grow up so quickly and not allowing me the opportunity to just be a kid and not worry about finances. I blamed them for everything, and I slowly became a victim of my circumstance. And I was in a very sour place. I started to think about things a little differently. I wanted to make my mark in the world, and I was starting to get irritated with everything. Because I was so annoyed with the circumstances from which I came, I started to get annoyed with my current state of life. And that was annoying me even further. So one day I woke up and I was like, you know what? I've had just about enough. I'm actually so freaking tired of feeling this way. I am so much older now. How many more years am I going going to go through dealing with the same BS time and time and time again. I need to put a stop to it, and I need to start healing, and I need to get it together. So I started asking myself, what do I need? If I had to parent myself, what would I do? How do I parent myself to make myself better and allow me to get out of this feeling that I have that's so toxic? I knew I was going somewhere when I realized that maturity was going to be my superpower. If I showed responsibility for myself, it calmed me down. If everything that I did from here on out was because of my decisions and my reactions and my doing, then that is progress. And I'm not blaming my circumstances and anyone or anything else because of where I stand. So that kind of maturity helped me move 10 steps forward. I started to become more solutions driven than problem driven. And that shift in mindset was all I needed to propel myself to a better standing in life. I then looked at all the lessons that I had learned with my parents from being pious and praying all the time. And I started to read the books with intention, looking at the tools that I have been given for all these years that I had not exercised properly and adequately, and started to align it to how I lived my life. I wasn't going saint mode. I was merely using the teachings to be functional in the world, as opposed to just being someone that prayed. I prayed with intention. I asked for what I wanted, and I acted on what I asked for. So if I wanted strength to get through the 5 meetings in that week, then I knew that I couldn't just ask for strength to get through those 5 meetings in the week. I would pray and ask for the strength, but I would do the work. I would make sure I was well read. I would make sure I was well prepared. I would make sure I practiced before I went to that presentation. And because I equipped myself with the tools, because God helps those who help themselves, I started to see the light of the teachings that I was learning through prayer. Now, that's a simple example that I used. As I progressed with my learnings and as I started to use it with more intricate things in my life, I started to understand that prayer is not just about sitting down and closing your eyes and praising God. That's one element of it. It is a percentage of it, but it is not everything. Prayer has to go hand in hand with doing the work. It has to go hand in hand with practicing kindness and compassionate and being forward thinking and not relying on just a supernatural power to help you, because then your prayer doesn't make any sense. I don't think I've cracked the whole code yet, obviously, because I think when you crack the code, then you become God realized. What I am saying is that I think I've gotten better in using prayer as a tool, as opposed to before, where it was just a thing that I did, but I didn't see it as a tool. I didn't see it as something that would help my stress levels because I meditated. I didn't see Liki Japa as something that helped with my discipline. When I started to act on it and use it with intention, the result of it was far greater than I had ever experienced my whole life. I then started to change my attitude towards myself. I'm in charge of myself. I'm the one to blame. I am the person that is responsible for this life that I have. And while I may have come from a circumstance that irritated me, that gave me resentment, that annoys me, that is not who I am. And I need to pull myself away from the darkness and move into the light and take responsibility for who I am and what I do from here on out. I chose myself and I stopped playing the victim. When I started to choose myself, I had more realizations that self-development is such a fundamental step in you becoming the best version of yourself. And that is why I do so much of self-development on the front row on TikTok, on the front row on YouTube, and on Instagram as well. I want to share how important it is to put in the work for yourself. Because the happier you are with yourself, the more work you do on yourself, the more you help yourself grow as a person, whether it is mentally, physically, or otherwise, the better you are in society, the better you are in life. Because when you don't do the work for yourself, you project. I saw it with myself. Because I was not working on myself, I was not doing the inner work. I was not meditating with intention. I was not journaling. I was not reading the right books. I was not joining the right people. I was not saying the right things to myself. All of this inner work that I was not doing resulted in me projecting in a negative way to everyone that was around me. But the more I put in work, the more I pour into my own cup, the better version I am, and the better I am to myself as well. Self-development led to my self-love. And that made all the difference. When you take care of yourself, you're putting yourself first. And if God resides within yourself, then you're putting God first. And that's how I looked at it. And I also realized that self-development is a daily journey. Because there's many instances where I didn't have time to meditate, or I didn't have time to focus on myself or well-being. And I saw the repercussions of that. I saw that I started to spiral backwards. I saw that I started to get more irritated and go back to the old way of thinking. And so that's why I know that prioritizing my self-care, my self-development, my self-love is important for my mental wellness and for me to be a better person in society. And especially when you have traumas, it's so important to start filling your cup. And all of us have traumas. You may think, oh, I don't have the life that that person has, so I need to feel blessed. That's absolutely correct. But it doesn't mean that you don't have your own traumas that you have to deal with. And the more we put in the work for ourselves, the better we will perform in society. That acceptance of I am responsible, I need to do the work, allowed me to have so much more freedom. And in having that freedom of thought, in having freedom of my heart, where my heart wasn't feeling those dark thoughts anymore, I let go of the resentment that I had towards my parents. And that actually happened very recently, where I thought about it and I was reading a lot of content around it, that my parents did everything that they could with what they had. So I cannot resent that. One, because I have never walked the life that my parents have walked. So I don't know better. I may have thought that I know better, but I don't know better. I don't know what I would have done if I had gone through the exact same thing that they had gone through. And because they went through what they did what they thought was the best option for myself and my brother. So I need to be grateful for that. And they also did everything that they could do within the aptitude that they allowed themselves to grow. They allowed themselves to be this kind of person. This is the kind of human they wanted to be in society. And because they chose to be those humans in society, that was the best they could do for me. And that's okay, because I didn't walk their shoes and I don't know what I don't know. And if they had done things differently, I would not be who I am today. I would not be this Roanna with all the lessons, with all the growth, with all the understanding of life if they had done things differently. So I should be grateful for that, because every little thing needed to have happened exactly the way it was supposed to happen, so I could be the individual that I am. The universe conspired to make things happen for me, and everything around me happened for me. And when I started to think like that, I looked at life very differently. I had more gratitude in my heart for my parents. I started to stop the resentment, and I started to show more love and care towards them, because whatever had happened is not my business. What was important was that I was sorting myself out. I was doing the inner work. I was healing. I was being better, and I wasn't a product of my circumstance. Because the worst thing that can happen is for you to become the person that you don't want to become, or you to become a version of your parents that you have resentment towards, because then you're just not stopping the cycle. And if I wanted to stop generational curses, if I wanted to stop the cycle of what I felt was happening to me, I needed to do the work for myself, and that was my own responsibility, and it was my own problem. So now I'm moving forward in life with a sense of forgiveness and with a sense of healing. And I know that this turnaround for me is just going to make me feel better. Of course, there's moments that I will get irritated or will set me back because it will trigger something of my past. But the more I put in the work on myself, I will get better and I will heal from this. And that's what I want this takeaway from this video to be, is that come what may, you have the power to put in the work, even if it means you getting professional help to do the work for yourself. Studies confirm that self-compassion builds resilience. Parenting yourself means accountability, and we need more accountable people in the world. When you share your vulnerability, it makes you more accessible to more humans. And that's my reason for doing these videos. Even if I get one view on a video like this, I know that I will have done something good for at least one person. I thank you so much for choosing the front row and watching through to the end. And I'll see you on the next episode of Lemon and Honey. Cheers.